All right, we are recording for the fifth tale in this version of Grimm's fairy tales, which is Cinderella. Which means I don't feel I need to go through much of a summary of the story because I think it's safe to assume that's one of these that most everyone will know. But it is different. We definitely get a more sanitized version in plenty of things. One thing, we get a little bit more knowledge about her actual mother, because it is the two stepsisters and is a wicked stepmother, all that. Although the dad is not that great either. But before her mother died, "Dear child, be good and pious, and then the good God will always protect thee, and I will look down on thee from heaven and be near thee." So, yeah, it is. For different reasons, I've been looking at some other things and just having to think about the presentation of virtue in stories, and clearly this is, it's in the first paragraph. So clearly we have the mother trying to instruct her daughter with her final breath, even that she should be virtuous, good and pious. So those would both be considered virtues. Now, this does kind of suggest that maybe the dad isn't that great. Is that winter came, the snow spread a white sheet over the grave, which Cinderella was actually visiting every day and crying there. And when the spring sun had drawn it off again, the man had taken another wife. So on the one hand, that's kind of fast. But on the other hand, there are some men that absolutely in that situation where I have a daughter, I just lost my wife, I'm going to remarry as fast as possible because I need somebody to help with this, to help raise her. That is absolutely reasonable. But, I mean, he definitely, later on, he's also insulting Cinderella. It's like, dude, seriously, the stepdaughters are terrible people. Why are you doing this? And the stepmother's terrible, too. Yeah, the stepsisters were beautiful and fair of face, but vile and black of heart. This is in the second paragraph, by the way. Now began a bad time for the poor stepchild. "Is the stupid goose to sit in the parlor with us?" they said. "He who wants to eat bread must first earn it. Out with the kitchen wench." And later the father also refers to her as a kitchen wench. It's definitely interesting. Not at all a happy relationship, but even though it doesn't explicitly say it, it does describe it very clearly that, no, she does continue to be good and pious throughout. Okay. Okay, it is there, and it is, I actually want to talk about it more with Rumpelstiltskin, which is the next story. So the stepsisters make her, they actually throw her food, her peas and lentils, into the ashes, and so she has to pick them out for her to eat. They make her do all the work, which is in part working with the fire. She also had no bed and had to sleep by the fireside in the ashes. And as on that account, she always looked dusty and dirty, and they named her Cinderella. Now, as I said, I will talk about more with Rumpelstiltskin, because that really is a story that, as I recall, exemplifies it. Is the old concept of power in names. So them naming her in this way, especially as it is meant as an insult, really is them also saying that we have power over you, we control you. Which would also help show their arrogance and how they are. So vile and, what was it, black of heart? Yeah, black of heart. That they feel that they can just do this to somebody who is their stepsister, so in theory at least is near them in age. So yeah, I mean, whew. But as I said, I'll try to talk more about that with Rumpelstiltskin. But I will at least say this much, that there is an older concept. I don't think it's really present much in modern Western culture, and I do think I do think I can count these as still from Western culture, just not the modern West, because back when Europe was the West. Europe technically is, but anyhow. It's not part of modern culture much, the concept of names and names having power. Not in the way that you would have seen here, but it is interesting. I think that may also be present here. And I will also add this. This is clearly meant as an insult. So, like Snow White is in here later. That is, again, a name given to her to describe her that isn't necessarily the name she was given at birth. But at least that is meant to be descriptive and is not meant to be insulting. So, but this is. Okay, so I mentioned the whole dumping the lentils in there. So when the time comes, and this is one of the differences from the stories, the Great Ball that she goes to, when, the pumpkin carriage, all that. Yet none of that's in this. Instead, it is, yes, there's the ball so that the prince can meet all the young women in the kingdom to find one for him to marry. This happens over 3 days, though. And each of those days, Cinderella is left at home. So the father is going with the new wife and the stepdaughters, leaving her at home. Now, something that I didn't explain, she planted a tree at the mother's grave, and whenever she goes there, there's a little bird that if she wishes for something, the bird actually will give it to her. And so the stepmother, not wanting her to go, is like, all right, well, here, if there's a bowl of lentils in the ashes now. If you can pick all those out in 2 hours, I'll let you go. Well, she goes to the window, asks for the birds to come in and help. Just all birds, not necessarily the ones at that tree. They come, they help, and in less than an hour. So, time limit of 2 hours, less than an hour. Here it is. You're filthy. You don't know how to dance. So, no, you still can't go. But here, 2 bowls full in the ashes. If you can get those out inside of an hour, then you can go. Calls them again, less than half an hour. Here are your bowls. Nope, still can't go. I don't know why you even want to go. We're leaving, kind of thing. I mean, it's like really, really being mean. So she then goes to that tree and asks for help, for silver and gold to be dropped on her, and that's what happens. Silver and gold for the gown and shoes. And then she goes there, and the way it describes it is basically the prince sees her and is like, so there's no one else here, right? I mean, it's like no one else even exists. Is only ever dancing with her. Anytime somebody else approaches to try dancing with her, his response is, she has a partner. Or she is my partner. Or something like that. He is claiming her every time. But as it draws late, we don't have the whole, oh, it's getting to be midnight, I have to get it. No, none of that. It's purely he wants to, take her to her home, because he wants to see, where are you from? And she doesn't want to reveal this. So she has to escape from him, runs into a pigeon house, seems a little odd, to escape him, succeeds at this, but does slip out the back, drops the gown back off at the grave, puts her gray gown on that is the ash-covered, the soiled one that her stepsisters gave her, then ran back to the house, so no one would know. But what's curious is no one recognized her. The stepsisters don't recognize her and such. But when the prince is she ran to the pigeon house. Why would she do that? Her father is there and actually is like, is that Cinderella? Huh. And then the prince is like, what are we going to do? He's like, go get an axe. So the father gets an axe to break it down to get her out, to find out if she's in there, but she had already escaped. That's night 1. Day 1. On the second day, same thing happens. Now she went back to the grave, got an even better dress and better shoes, attends, and now when she tries to escape, she climbs a tree, a pear tree, I think it was pear tree, and managed to escape. And again, the father is there and is like, is that Cinderella? And it's like, and then the prince is like, get next. All right, chops down. Why the father is there and part of this, I don't know. That's not explained. It's not like he works for the king, so it makes sense that he would be there for this. Him escorting the wife and stepdaughters, that's fine. But why is the prince telling him to do this? It could be he does work for the king in some regards, such that it makes sense for that request. Anyhow, chops down the tree. She's not there. She had already made it up. Well, now the prince is getting smart. He has the steps lined with pitch, which I've never worked with, but I have seen it depicted in various things. Some would have been accurate, some not. It is a very sticky substance. So the reason he did this, not so much that it would keep her from escaping, but she loses the shoe, which, by the way, is a gold shoe. It's not a glass shoe. Excuse me. But here's the thing. Because, I mean, I forgot to mention, both the previous days, he went home with the father. And, actually, I'm not sure if he was going to see that, but it is still, there is an awareness that it's one of the girls from that house. So it's not all the young women in the land try on the shoe. No, it's just the three from that house. Although initially it's like, well, it has to be one of these two, one of the two stepdaughters. So goes there with it. And, I mean, this is one of those things. You don't let them try to put on the shoe in secret. I mean, it's kind of like, I remember a criticism for the O.J. Simpson trial. You don't let him try to put the glove on. That was completely inappropriate. They actually should have had somebody try to put it on him so he can't, like, jam it or something so he can't put it. Like, no. You need to actually witness this. But the prince doesn't. Eldest daughter goes up, tries to put it on. The mother is there. And it's like, I can't put it on. My big toe doesn't fit in there. It's like, here's a knife. Dude. Or do that. Whatever. And let me actually try to get the line. Which, again, I think is very interesting. Well, here. For the second one, it's not the toes fit, it's the heel that doesn't. So I'll just read that, because it's the same thing she says. Cut a bit off thy heel. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no more need to go on foot. When thou art queen, you will have no more need to go on foot. Translating that a little bit. She says this to both of them to justify mutilating their feet. Well, one foot. But, yeah, it's like, so I don't know why hopefully the mic is still picking up when I'm putting my hand there. It's just, for whatever reason, my glasses seem to be pulling forward a little bit on me. Anyhow. And the prince actually falls for it both times, except while leaving, they pass by the grave, and the bird, well, actually there's two birds there, it seems, sing out that that's a false bride, that if you look, there's blood. He looks and is like, yep, going back. So that's why, nope, not the eldest daughter, go. Gives it to the other one, who cuts off the bit of heel. And then, again, blood, and it's like, comes back, and it's like, do you have any other daughters? Yeah. Have you no other daughters? No, said the man. There is still a little stunted kitchen wench, which my late wife left behind her. But she cannot possibly be the bride. It's like, dude. What? She's your actual daughter, not unlike the other two. Unless it turns out that there was some hanky-panky going on beforehand. Which I don't think is relevant. I don't think that that's reasonable. But in any case, it still is dude, why are you insulting her like this? You're not a good person. I legitimately was half expecting him to get some comeuppance, but no, it was only the stepsisters. But yeah, she cannot possibly be the bride. But the king's son said he was to send her up to him, but the mother answered, oh no, she is much too dirty, she cannot show herself. He absolutely insisted on it, and Cinderella had to be called. And so she washed off her hands and face, does come, tries it on, it fits perfectly. And so it's like, okay, it's you. Now again, riding out, goes past the grave, and now the birds are singing about how, yes, this is the true bride. They come and land on either shoulder, which is important, because when it now comes time for them to be married, the stepsisters, although it doesn't really mention how they're walking, since they've mutilated their feet, but in any case, or maybe it's just they're in great pain, they flank her, because they want to be close to her, because, like, she can be nice to us, right? And maybe we'll get some food. The birds are like, I see eyeballs. So they peck out. The one on her right shoulder pecks out the left eye of that sister, and vice versa over here. And then it's like, no. But they're still so desperate. They swap sides. So now the other eye gets pecked out and they're left blind. It's like, jeez. This is what I'm looking for in fairy tales. Yes. Let there be vengeance. Let there be punishment for these horrible, wicked people. Oh, seriously, I'm okay with this. I kind of expect it in some of these tales. And it is a fun. Part of the idea is to teach morals. Legitimately, it is. And those sisters were horrible. I mean, what if somebody would actually behave like that and their eyes got pecked out? I wouldn't be happy. I'd probably try to be getting rid of the birds, but I'd also be like, you two should never see her again. Leave the country, even. But I also find it interesting, going back a little bit. Well, them thinking that, but it's also, what does the stepmother say? What does their mother say? Let me actually get it so I have it. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no more need to go on foot. I find this actually very interesting. That they have such a view of royalty that they're basically no longer human. And I find that very fascinating, that you would think that. Because I'm like, of course they're human. It's like, what do you mean wouldn't be walking around anymore? I mean, if nothing else, she has to walk up to get married. You know, walk down the aisle, all that. But would be walking around in the castle. Technically, as a queen, although I think technically she'd be a princess since the king is still alive. The father is still alive. The current king. But it's like, she also is to have children, and you'd think would be playing with the children, which would involve moving. I mean, it is like, they feel such a disconnect. They feel that royalty is so disconnected. They themselves are disconnected from humanity because they are so horrible people. But it is just interesting that this, like, they're not human, and we want to be like that. Like, we want to be so disconnected from humanity as well. And it's like, wow, they really are bad people. But, you know, what is it with the prince? He loves her, or at least believes he does, to be fair. Only 3 days, all they did was, you know, dance together. Maybe some conversation, but mainly that. I mean, still is. You know, it's a movie. That's Adams. Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer. Cary Grant, Myrna Loy, Shirley Temple. There's only one other person whose name I might have a chance of. Ray Collins. That's it. I think. Lieutenant Tragg from Perry Mason. Anyhow. Cary Grant and Myrna Loy it's a romantic comedy. They are the two that ultimately get together. He describes how he's an artist. His parents, the way they ended up falling in love was his father just knew that if he ever put his arms around a woman and she felt right, he'd know. It's sort of a love at first sight kind of thing, and it worked. That the first time he danced with the woman who he does marry, he puts his arms there, and it's like, you feel right, this is who I'm marrying. And so it might be like that to a degree. Where, by the way, just to help, Myrna Loy describes with her parents, they like studied on this, they knew each other for years, and it wasn't until they felt that, yes, it was, you know, like, very, very pragmatic. It's like, kind of dull. It is a good movie, though. It is a good movie. And even though, yes, it is a romantic... I'm just trying to think, because I do distinguish between romantic comedy and rom-com. I think I would bias it towards being a romantic comedy more than being just a rom-com. It does have rom-com elements, but there's enough of a sense of sincerity and urgency to it. Not like urgent, but just urgency is in like a synonym to sincerity. That I think I would tip it more towards romantic comedy. It is in between the two. It is in between the two. It's a good movie. Anyway, remind me of a man with power. Power. Hang on. Who do you do? Do what? Remind me, man with power. Yeah, anyway, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I still remember it. It's a good movie. So yeah, it's. Hang on, I just want to. Okay. Yeah. No, I covered all my notes. So yeah, we got the traditional aspects that you'd expect for fairy tales. Technically, they're all traditional fairy tales. They're all traditional stories anyway. But the main character is virtuous. The evil characters are punished in a somewhat grotesque manner. But I mean, it is like I was just saying before going off on that tangent, they seem to believe in a disconnect from people and desire that for themselves. Whereas Cinderella here is humble and in a servant role to her family, and not because of her choice, because they are very cruel to her and force her into that position. But she's also told, be good and pious, and she's trying to live that. And the prince is human. He doesn't. He just loves her. He doesn't care what level she's at. No, bring her to me. It's like, oh, kitchen wench, I don't care. Bring her to me. This is who I want. And it is, he is also in that regard good and pious, and is just, I do find that interesting, that how the stepmother and therefore also the stepdaughters feel that they are separate, which also then gives them their own justifications for how they treat her, how they treat Cinderella. Putting her, they take her clothes away from her and give her this gray gown. They take away her shoes, give her wooden ones. So it's actually at the end, she has to take her foot out of the clumsy wooden shoe to put into the gold one. I mean, it is kind of interesting, and also, I'm just trying to think, what would be the reason? I guess she's just embarrassed, and that's why she runs, and that's why she runs from the prince. She doesn't want to be discovered. She doesn't want anyone to know it was her. Yeah, that actually does make a lot of sense, because she did defy the stepmother by going. And she didn't necessarily go there to become the wife of the prince. She went there probably for fun. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I've never been a girl. But it makes sense to me that if it's going to be the biggest party the kingdom has seen for potentially an entire generation, and all the young women have been invited, and she wants to go. Obviously, she wants to go. She doesn't need any other reason than that. And she was told not to, and she potentially doesn't even want all the attention on her, but she wants to enjoy it. Just so happens that the prince falls for her. I mean, so it actually does make some sense in that she would run, because she doesn't want the attention on her. That's not what her purpose is. That's not what her desire is. I can understand that, actually. Whereas the stepsisters, they want that attention, because it helps them feel separated from everyone else. I mean, I guess I will admit, my words are not forming well in my head at the moment, but the stepsisters do seem like the kind that they may live in a hovel, but they would have a collection of gowns. Well, actually, no, that's true. It is in there. To a degree. Okay. So the father was going into town and asked all three daughters what they wanted. Beautiful dresses, said one. Pearls and jewels, said the second. Cinderella, what do you want? Break me off the first branch which knocks against your hat on your way home. This is what she then plants at her mother's grave, and her tears water it such that it does grow, and then you've got the two birds in there. But that is their concern, for beautiful dresses and pearls and jewels. But it might be, like, even if they lived in some sort of hovel, they want that. That's what they want, so then they can go out and be seen in that. And they could potentially want to hide that they have that hovel, and they would be jealously protective of those clothes because they want to appear one way, and could even be in denial that that's where they live. The whole, like, oh, well, my castle's being renovated or something like that, to just hide it. And that's who they are. Whereas Cinderella's, no, I mean, she's more sincere. She's good and pious, exactly as her mother told her to be. All right, that's all I got for now. Yeah, so next is Rumpelstiltskin, which will be interesting, because I do want to talk about the power of name concept, because they definitely are. That's interesting. Just looking at this a little bit, at one point when trying to guess the names, goes with Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. which are traditionally the names ascribed to the three wise men from the Nativity story, which I find it makes sense that would have been passed down at that time so that children would know. But that almost makes me wonder if it's in the story to help children remember that. Because that is also one thing that is interesting is when, especially with something like the Bible, but with other things as well. Yes, there are pieces that were written down and then transcribed to be maintained, but some also we would call them legends, but were continued just through oral tradition, and were not necessarily written down, or not written down and collected with them, such as those three names. Those, in fact, could legitimately have been the names of the wise men, but they just weren't recorded in the same place, but they were passed down other ways. Yeah. And it is, I mean, like, technically, that's how some of these stories would be. Like, Hansel and Gretel, that's right. When I've talked about looking that up, how there's variations of it throughout Europe at that time. But the Brothers Grimm only wrote down the one version of it, but the others would still, potentially still survive. Maybe written down other things, but most people know Grimm's fairy tales, also Mother Goose. I'm not sure when that is from. But it's like we know those collections, so the stories that survived by other means, in other locations, not so sure about. But that would have been like, the legend says that, according to those legends, the witch in the gingerbread house was actually their stepmother. Things like that. So fun stuff. It is. All literature, to some degree, is historical because it records the culture of the time, the environment at the time, because it's, like I said, with Robert Bridegroom, it's also the case with Hansel and Gretel. If these were written in times of famine, the idea of cannibalism was a consideration then, was a concern then. Still recognized as evil, but potentially you would hear stories about it because the famine was so severe. And it's like that is recorded in these stories then. Also sort of like the Ring on the Rosy, Pockets Full of Posies, Ashes, Ashes, We All Fall Down, seemingly being a reference. I'm not sure if it actually is the Black Plague, Black Death, or if it's a different one. But it's still, doing that because trying to hide the odor with the Pockets Full of Posies, Ring Around the Rosy, because you may develop the specific plague produce rings, and then we all fall, ashes, ashes, we all fall down and die. But I think that also part of that is incorrect. Like I said, I think sometimes they try to say that's connected to the Black Death, but I think it actually might be connected to a different plague. It's just like I was saying, it's like some things I think may be wrong there because it's the wrong association. It might be this one instead of this one, kind of thing. Anyway. Definitely going on a bit too much here, especially because I got something else I want to work on today. All right. See you next time for Rumpelstiltskin.